Garry Kasparov playing white today in Game 9 was expected yet again to examine Nigel Short's home preparation in the most ruthless manner. Could Nigel find a way to counter the champion's domination with the white pieces? Could he stop the champion from increasing his lead to 5 points? The start of Game 9, the score was 6-2. Hello and welcome to the Savoy Theatre at the end of Game 9 of the Times World Chess Championship. After 8 games, Nigel Short struggling to keep in the match and today playing black, desperate to stop the rot. Just 1 draw and 3 defeats to his credit so far when Kasparov has had the white advantage. Well, with me to look back on all the day's events here in London, Grandmaster Daniel King and former British women's champion Cathy Forbes. Now, Daniel, what was Kasparov expected to do at the beginning of this game?
Well, we all thought he was going to open with pawn to e4. He's won 3 games with this opening move, but he surprised us.
Yes, he did, because Kasparov has had fantastic results, hasn't he, with e4?
Yes, he has, but I think he either wanted to learn something or prove something by playing d4 this time.
OK, well, let's join the game right at the very beginning at around 4 o'clock this afternoon with Daniel King and Raymond Keane commentating.
Well, Short's black this afternoon, and he's really got to stop the rot. He must try and at least draw against Kasparov's first move. Oh, he played pawn to d4. That renders the whole thing academic. How fascinating. How fascinating. How fascinating. Kasparov has won every game by playing the first move pawn to e4, and his only draw as white, the only draw he's conceded is pawn to d4, and he's repeated it. This is repeating the opening where Short's preparation was so brilliant in Game 5.
Well, perhaps Kasparov has had time to just plug the holes in his home preparation, and perhaps he's got some big new move against Nigel's brilliant opening, that
Nimzo Indian.
The Nimzo Indian defence, which Nigel played the other day.
Here it comes.
Short repeating the moves from, I believe it was Game 5.
Game 5, yes.
Yep.
This is amazingly exciting. I mean, Kasparov's going to challenge him in the same variation.
There we go. Looks like a Nimzo Indian.
Yes, Nimzo Indian.
If Short moves the bishop out to b4, then we've got this Nimzo Indian again. Short just mulling things over.
He's bound to play bishop b4.
He knows if he repeats it, then he could be walking into some fantastic home preparation of Kasparov's. And there he goes.
He's taken the challenge.
So this bishop move characterises the Nimzo Indian defence, named after our friend Aaron Nimzovich, one of the greatest players in the 1920s. Now, this bishop move here, the bishop pins White's knight. White's knight cannot move because White's king will be in check from the bishop. So Kasparov moving the queen out. Now that protects the knight, so that if the bishop takes, he can just capture the queen. And Short staking his claim in the centre with this pawn move, exactly the same as Game 5. That's Short's fantastic home preparation. Now what has Kasparov got ready for him? He's taken again. It's all the same, so we expect Short to take with the pawn.
This was the game where Short drew the game in just 11 minutes of his own thinking time. So this is Kasparov's really accepting the challenge.
And Kasparov really looks like he's relishing the contest ahead, giving a knowing smile. It's all the same as Game 5. Now what's he got ready? Good grief. I wouldn't like to be Short here.
Yeah, this is a battle about Nigel Short's preparation, about whether enough midnight oil has been burned. Pawn to h6, hitting the bishop. Well, this might be an attempt to take advantage of Lubos Kovalek's absence, but I suspect that the real gurus behind this variation, bishop to h4, are probably Spielman and Hübner.
Again, Kasparov going for the most critical continuation. He could have simply taken this knight and just solidified his central pawn position by moving this pawn up the board just 1 square to here. But he's inviting Short to lunge forward. There he goes. Pawn exactly the same as in Game 5.
And so far it was exactly the same as in Game 5. But let's pick the game up there now on move 8 with Fritz, our computer, in the studio, and Kasparov to move.
So Kasparov took the pawn, he has to do that, and Short lashed out. Again, exactly the same as game 5.
Now, he did that to move the bishop back.
Yeah, move the bishop back. Then, whoops, a couple of moves time. Short lunged in with his knight. Kasparov played the pawn out, and Short's queen out came out to a5, just increasing the pressure along this line towards Kasparov's king.
And Kathy, it was still the same as game 5?
Yeah, well, this is important because Kasparov lost the argument in game 5, the opening argument, and he didn't like that one little bit, and I think he's got something nasty up his sleeve.
Yes, we were all waiting for the move, wasn't he? Weren't we? And it was, in fact, on move 11 that things began to change, and this is what Kasparov did. He moved the knight on the G file, down there on G1, up to E2. And that's the move that began to make the difference. Why was that significant, Daniel?
Right, well, this knight protects the pinned knight on c3. It gives it some additional support. Kasparov really suffered in game 5 because of that.
Because it was all around that knight on c3,
yeah,
wasn't it?
The struggle revolved around the knight on c3. So this knight move gives this knight some additional support.
Okay, well, let's carry on now, and we'll pick up the game with Kasparov to move on move 12.
And Nigel playing very aggressively. The whole setup is very aggressive. But this last game, the game that was played 2 days ago, probably one of the most... Bishop e5 now.
Bishop e5. But Kasparov playing instantly. He's obviously got it all worked out.
Doesn't mean it's good. It just means he's got it worked out. It could be something that leads to equality. It could be a bit of poker. It could be some gambling. There could be some bluff involved.
Well, I don't believe it. I think Kasparov's got something very strong here.
So bishop to e5, Daniel. Let's have a look at that.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the move that Short's team had missed in their home analysis. It was quite clear because, in fact, Short thought 41 minutes over his reply to this bishop move. Looks very natural. The bishop defends the knight on c3 and attacks the rook here. Why they missed this in their home analysis, I don't know.
But this is obviously, Kathy, something that Kasparov had worked on since game 5 with his team of analysts.
Since game 5, I'm not sure that Short's team actually missed it. I think they maybe looked at it and dismissed it, thinking it was no good. But then as Short sat at the board, I think he began to be less and less sure.
Well, that, as you say, Daniel, I mean, he took, what, 41
minutes over his reply to this move.
And I know it was something that yourself and Ray suggested almost instantaneously, which was to castle, wasn't it?
Well,
on his king's side.
There are perhaps 3 possible alternatives for black here. It's such a complicated position. You can try and grab material, play more safely by castling as Short did, but when you're faced with this over the board, it's terribly difficult to make a decision.
And it's interesting, Kathy, because in most of the games so far, they have had these incredibly sharp lines, terribly complicated positions, haven't they? Not defensive at all.
Well, I think Kasparov burnt a lot of midnight oil over this, and he actually said that you need to maybe spend not just 41 minutes thinking about this position, but 41 hours to try and come up with the best move, the best overall sequence for black from here on.
Okay, well, the game obviously continued on apace. Nigel Short, after taking the 41 minutes to make his move to castle on the king's side, then started to speed up slightly, and we'll join the game again with Ray and Daniel commentating with Kasparov on move 35.
There we go. Rook d7 check.
Rook d7 check. This is simplifying the position.
A game-winning move. Rook takes. Bishop takes.
Short exchanges off the rooks. Kasparov recaptures, so it's rook for rook. But now this A pawn is going to fall.
But even worse,
there's no defense.
H6.
Short takes the pawn.
And Kasparov will doubtless hack off the pawn on A7.
Okay, so that was obviously significant. Let's have a look at Kasparov's move 35 on Fritz. That was obviously the first one we saw there on the tape.
Right. Well, Kasparov had beaten off Short's early initiative and had reached an endgame. That's a position where there were no queens on the board, and he's 2 pawns up. Well, yeah, 2 pawns up here, and he decided he could simplify the position by playing his rook down, giving check to black's king over here, So Short must exchange rooks. Kasparov recaptured. Short took the pawn, and now Kasparov simply took Short's last pawn. So Kasparov has a position where he's 2 pawns up. It's equal material apart from that, but these 2 pawns should guarantee Kasparov a technical win.
And it was interesting because Kasparov at this point was trying to basically get rid of as many pieces as possible from the board.
That's right.
Possibly to simplify the situation?
It's good strategy when you have these two-pawn advantage to simplify the position. It should be winning fairly easily.
Well, both players comfortably made the time control, so they made their 40 moves each within 2 hours. And we'll now have a look at move 43, the next significant moment, with Kasparov to move here. And that is what he did. He took the knight, which had been trapped somehow on h1. Short had moved it into there. It wasn't really doing very much there, was it?
Right. Well, Kasparov continued further simplification of the position, hoping to get down to just some very simple technical winning position. But possibly he was too anxious to do this.
Yes, because really, I think he'd sort of half expected Short to resign after the time control, because he was 2 pawns up, wasn't he, Kathy? Kasparov, he was sort of, you know, he had the obvious advantage.
Yes, that's right, but I think he encouraged Short because he started to play a little carelessly. At one moment he played a very flashy show-off move, which Short just sidestepped, and I think that encouraged Short to keep playing.
Yes, it did, and Short obviously considering now, it seems fairly obvious, I suppose, that he would reply by taking the bishop.
So they've just exchanged off knight for bishop.
Knight for bishop.
Yeah.
And let's have a look at that move 43, Daniel, and analyse that slightly.
So here we go. Kasparov still has this 2-pawn advantage. Now, Kasparov's bishop in the centre of the board is attacked by the rook. It would have been very simple, perhaps, just to move this pawn up the board 1 square, just to protect the bishop. Instead, he continued simplification. Perhaps he did this too quickly. He captured the knight. Short captured the bishop. That's an equal exchange, both worth 3 points. But perhaps this position isn't so easy to win. And suddenly, Short had chances that he hadn't had for the last 10, 20 moves.
Yes, because from this moment in, Nigel Short looked as though he was trying to fight for a draw with Kasparov in this game. And we'll pick the game up now on move 46 with Kasparov to make his move. And you can see the pieces have changed marginally there, and Kasparov moving his pawn up. But Kathy, it was obvious at this point that, you know, Kasparov really hadn't got it in his brain how to get the win, had he? How to nail Nigel.
Well, I mean, this position should be technically winning for White, but actually it does require, I think, very accurate play. And perhaps Kasparov is not fully aware of that. I think he really thought it was completely winning no matter what he did, and he started to play a bit on autopilot.
Yes, he did, because I say again that I think he expected Short to resign, didn't
That's
he?
right. A 2-pawn advantage is normally enough to win the position. And in fact, I think if we see Kasparov there, he's almost expecting Short to give up.
Nigel's reply is beginning to move his king up the board there. And that was where things started to go all around the board, really, didn't it? There was lots of chasing of kings.
Yeah, well, things went downhill after that. But in fact, Short missed a good drawing chance in that position. Kasparov had relaxed, and well, too early. It's often, when you have a winning position, it's so easy to relax, and that's a weakness on the part of Kasparov. I mean, he's too confident.
Yes. I mean, when we saw some of the very early moves in the game, Kasparov was smiling. He was obviously looking forward to the fight, and he was smiling less as the game went on, wasn't he, Kathy?
Well, that's right. Well, I think he set out with the intention of humiliating Nigel, and I think that in the last few moves, he was also just sitting there really arrogantly thinking to himself, why don't you resign, and just sort of trying to heap some humiliation on. And this was very arrogant, I think, and he deserves to pay for this, actually.
Well, let's see whether he paid for it or not. We'll now pick up the game with Ray and Daniel commentating on move 51, Kasparov to move.
So Short's just played his 50th move. Short's played his 50th move. Rook check by Kasparov. Short's played his 50th move. He's attacking the white pawn on e4, but his own king is now in check. King moves away. This could be the climax of the game.
Now, what Kasparov, I think, is going to do here, he's going to play his rook up the board where it protects both pawns. Now, that will enable, once the rook is on this square here, on the X here, protects both pawns, and that will enable his king to run round and attack Short's rook. I think on this square, Kasparov will have no problems whatsoever to force the win.
This is looking completely hopeless.
That's a very clever idea from Kasparov.
What Short should have done, in my view, is when the white king moved over, he should always keep his king opposite the white king so that there are no checks. The rook is now in an ideal position. Short can now resign. This is over.
And Short has resigned.
Yeah.
And Short resigned after a brave fight. The score after game 9 now, Kasparov with a mighty lead of 5 points, 7 points to 2. Well, I interviewed Garry Kasparov immediately after Nigel Short resigned, and this is what he had to say. The game followed the same sequence as in game 5. Were you surprised that Nigel replied with black with an Nimzo Indian?
No, obviously. You know, after game 5, it was quite clear that he prepared it for the match, and when I analyzed at home, as I promised to,
yes,
my homework,
yes.
I mean, I had no doubt that it was a very, very interesting novelty prepared for especially for this match, and it took a lot of time for me just to find the appropriate continuation. I have to admit that I'm not sure that my counter novelty was a smashing one. But, you know, it was quite unusual, and it gave a hard time for Nigel during the game. But, again, I believe, you know, he had plenty of possibilities, and maybe we'll see this line again in the match.
Okay. Now, do you think that because, obviously, in game 5, Nigel forced the draw fairly quickly, that this was in any way sort of a revenge match for you? To try to prove that you could beat
No, it's quite unpleasant, you know, just to lose you know, one of your favorite openings because of the opponent's preparation. And I think it's very, very important, very principled from the one side to spend some time at home working on that position. And as Nigel said, the final position of the game 5 was not unfamiliar for him. And I have to admit, the end game after king takes c2 was not unfamiliar for me also. The problem is, we spend a lot of time analyzing other lines, and I'm not sure that the end game is, you know, we didn't have time just to analyze this end game, but I felt I had a very, very good winning chances.
Now, everyone was reeling here when you played bishop to e5 early on in the game, and Nigel replied by castling. Do you think that was the best reply to that?
That's, you know, he has to find out at home. I can tell you that there are several possibilities for black. And again, it took hours and hours and hours of work for me and for my team. And again, when I came to the stage today, I wasn't sure about the consequence of my decision because it's extremely complicated.
It was extremely complicated all the way through. And in the end game, you took as many pieces off the board as possible. Was this to try to simplify it?
I'm not sure that it was the simplest solution, but obviously, you know, my position was winning, and I decided that it's better to exchange all the pieces and to win the endgame. But it looked that I made a terrible blunder at the endgame, and he could probably escape. But okay.
What was the blunder?
It looked now. I mean, I have to check it, but it looked that in the endgame with 2 extra pawns. I mean, I just totally lost control, thinking that normally you have to resign.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you think that he would resign after the time
at one point I thought he would resign, but I didn't play. It's very accurately. Okay.
Now, Short never really got in the game, did he? Was that your intention with this game?
Yeah, he played, you know, an exciting game for him, I guess, because he had to solve so many problems in the opening. But no, we changed the sides today. I had my own home preparation, and now Nigel was facing some troubles at board during the game, and I don't think that there are many people that could solve these problems easily, because, believe me, it's extremely complicated. And after hours and hours of work, I couldn't reach the final conclusion.
There's some very sharp lines in
It's
there.
extremely sharp line, and again, probably we'll see it again in the match.
Yes. Well, as I have said to you before in the past, it's been some very exciting chess, and thank you for that. But over in Amsterdam, you might be interested to know that Campomanes has said that the deadline for the announcement of whether the match will continue or not will be on October the 2nd. If it is to continue, it will continue on October the 3rd, but things aren't looking too great over there. Do you think this vindicates your action with the PCA?
I think it proves again that FIDE is wrong organization to hold the World Championship match, and it brings more legality to our event, and it just proves again that only with a commercial organization like PCA we can eventually succeed by bringing chess to the people.
There's a quote here from Hendrik van Buren, one of the organisers, who said there's perhaps a 25% chance we can do it. Negotiations are nothing special now. Campomanes is telephoning half of the world to try and get it organised.
And even if they can put this match together, I think it's another proof that these guys are absolutely amateurish and non-professional, because you can't try to organize it during the event. And what disturbs me that it's all the lies that were behind this event. Just before we began our matches. They told about the huge prize fund, eventually was none. They talk about the great organization. I think that they lied, they cheated everybody, including themselves, and now they have to pay the price.
Okay, Gary, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think Gary Kasparov feeling rather pleased with himself after the result in Game 9, where he out-prepared the preparation of Nigel Short. So the score 7-2, Daniel. Not looking too good for Nigel now.
No, I mean, it really worries me that he can't put a decent defence together as black, actually. And, well, dare I say it, that perhaps Kavalek's presence is needed. I think he's an excellent chief of delegation.
It's interesting that, because Kasparov was talking there about his team of helpers. I know they haven't been present in the theatre, but obviously they're terribly important, Kathy, aren't they?
Well, they are, and not only in terms of the opening preparation, but I think something's wrong with Nigel psychologically, in that he fought back well in this game, but almost in its dying moments he missed actually a forced draw. He'd been playing on, he'd tempted Kasparov to get overconfident, he succeeded, and then he just missed his chance. It was as if he'd given up psychologically, and I think he's not psychologically in perfect shape, Nigel, I'm sorry to say.
Yes, he's had a lot of troubles. Obviously, the Kavalek going back to the US has not helped. And also Kasparov did think that Short would resign. And he did say that he was confused after that. Is that normal at this sort of level?
Well, I think it's normal at any level, that if you see you have a winning position, you expect your opponent to resign, to give up. It looks so easy. And that's the moment when you relax. The problem was that Nigel looked so demoralised, so that he wasn't even looking for this chance. If he'd been looking for it, he'd have found it.
Okay, well, thank you, both of you. We'll see you tomorrow, Daniel. We'll see you on Tuesday, Kathy. Hopefully things will be slightly better for us next week. Now, we'll be back at 5:05 tomorrow afternoon with a review of all of the games this week. There'll be myself, Raymond Keane, who will have spoken to both of the players tomorrow morning, and also Terry Waite, who'll be telling us how important chess was to him during his years in captivity. So 5:05 tomorrow, failing that, 3:30 on Tuesday. See you then.
There's a Channel 4 book written by Raymond Keane, an introduction to the Times World Chess Championship 1993. It's available from bookshops, priced at £2.50.